Chofetz Chaim had cited a verse from Micha, where the prophet says, in the name of Hashem, what does God want from you? Asos mishpat, to do justice, and Ahavas Chesed, to love kindness. Not to do kindness, but to love it. Love kindness. So he goes to explain, unfortunately, most people, when did they do kindness? Person who's poor comes to you and says, I need a favor. Initially, very often, if it's something more than something, a pittance, you try to evade that person. Comes back again, you can't evade him any longer. You have no choice, you have to give him. Because factually, he's down and out. You feel his pain, you give it to him. But the question is this: if a person truly had love for doing kindness, you would seek out the person and try to find out if you have the ability to assist him to make his life easier, to alleviate his plight, if you had love for kindness. But if you do it only as an obligation, when do you pay your taxes? When you have to pay taxes. If you don't pay taxes, you don't pay. If you don't have to pay. You find a legal loophole, you evade the tax. Legally, you evade the tax. It's not tax evasion because there's a loophole. So when it comes to Chesed, many people, even when they do it, it's because they can't evade it. And they're confronted directly, and that's why they do Chesed. But throughout the year, it's not, they're looking for opportunities to do Chesed. The Navi, the prophet says, no, God wants you to love Chesed. And he gives an example. He says, you have a son who you love, and you provide for him. And because of the love that you have for him, you're always thinking in your mind, do I give him enough? I was with a son who behaves properly, responsibly, and the son gives you nachas. You have joy from him. You're proud to have such a son. And because of that nature of relationship, as much as you do, you always want to give him more because you appreciate who he is, his value. So there, because of the love that he has for his son, as much as he gives, he always wants to do more qualitatively, quantitatively to help the son. If a person loves kindness and you don't do it as an obligation, it's compulsory, you must, then you're open to many ways to see things. A person has a problem. You'll take on his problem, you'll think of a solution, how maybe you could advise him, how to find a position. Maybe, could I see your resume? Maybe your resume wasn't written right. Maybe when you go on an interview, maybe you don't present it right. Why don't you share with me something about your life? But who makes that kind of inquiry about to anyone? A person only truly has Ahavas Chesed because you want to do the right thing because you're a person who loves doing acts of kindness. Anything less than that, you're falling short of where you should be. So that person goes the extra mile. And he doesn't feel he goes the extra mile. He doesn't feel he's burdened. Because since it's something he truly loves, it's something he values, he wants to be involved. And to a certain degree, he never feels overly burdened as much as he does. As long as he could do, he wants to do more. There's a famous story with the Chofetz Chaim. Yesterday was the yahrzeit of the Chofetz Chaim, 90th anniversary of his passing, Chofetz Chaim. So there was a Jew who lived in England, very special Jew, a philanthropist, a person, anybody needed any favor, he was there to help the person. And he was running a business. And his wife says to him, you're running a business. You spend more time outside the business helping people than running the business. I think you're doing the wrong thing. As they say, charity begins at home. Your main investment of time should be in the business, and you do charity on the side, or do acts of kindness on the side. You, the first and foremost, is you helping other people, advising them, giving them, helping them. It's too much. So he says to his wife, I hear what you're saying, but the only way I'm going to change my involvement, if the Chofetz Chaim advised me, I should do differently. I'm going to travel to Radin, and from London to Radin wasn't a big trip, and I'll consult with the Chofetz Chaim. This is in the earliest part of the 20th century. He goes to the Chofetz Chaim, and it was known the Chofetz Chaim was divinely inspired. So a person would sit down before him, immediately he cited a verse in Psalms. Now, in Hebrew, there's a term for a pursuer, person pursues someone to take his life. He's called a rodef. Rodef means he's pursuing him. An unrelenting pursuit. Unceasing pursuit is called a rodef. And David HaMelech, in the Psalm, he says, and he requests of Hashem, of God, Chesed Yirdefuni kol yimei chayei, that Chesed should pursue him his whole life. So the Chofetz Chaim says that this person seems to be a little peculiar. Yirdefuni, what David is requesting, it's not that God should give him opportunities of Chesed to present themselves once in a while. It should be unceasing, unstopping, like a rodef, like a person's pursued by a person and hounded. That's the way I should be hounded by Chesed. He says, why? David understood the value of Chesed. Could you imagine you bring a person one of a kind of financial deal, and half an hour later you come in with another one and another one. The person says, what are you doing? Just too much already. If it's a good deal, just keep bringing the deals. David, because he had that understanding, appreciation of the innate value of doing Chesed, he says, let it pursue me all my life. That was David's request. That was his supplication to Hashem. So after Chofetz Chaim tells him this interpretation of David's words, he says to the person, Shalom Aleichem, where do you come from? London. Why did you come? He says, I have my answer. I just want a blessing from the Chofetz Chaim to continue to do what I'm doing. And he walks out. He didn't even have to present this question. His wife is telling him that you're engaging in Chesed to such a level, unceasing. It's too much already. David, the king of Israel, the man who conquered Israel on behalf for a son, he says, I want Chesed. It should pursue me all the days of my life. Now, why does Chesed have that special value that you want Chesed to pursue you continuously? Why? We mentioned many times that there's a positive commandment to emulate God's ways. Every day in the Amidah, in the second blessing, we say, Mechalkel Chayim b'Chesed. God sustains life with Chesed, the world that continues. All the amenities of the world that are needed for the world just to function at a base level. And it's even beyond that. What is the basis for that? Why does he will every moment the world should function in a certain context? So we say in the Amidah, B'chalkel Chayim b'Chesed. God sustains life with Chesed. That's what we say. B'chalkel Chayim b'Chesed. We say Zrofei Cholim, Matir Asurim. There's many things. But in general, the concept is God sustains life with Chesed. So if there's a mitzvah to emulate God, and Chesed is the core of existence, because without that, the world couldn't exist. If God would allow the attribute of justice to only give Chesed to those who were worthy and deserving, you understand there wouldn't be many people walking this planet. It's only because it's indiscriminate kindness. He sustains it with Chesed. So evidently, the innate value of chesed is essential and most special. So if God ongoingly wills existence in the context of chesed, so we as Jews, and he wants us to emulate us, himself, how should we conduct ourselves? Identically. Unceasing chesed. As he unceasingly is chesed, we should be unceasing chesed. But the opportunity has to present itself. That's David. I want chesed to pursue me continuously. That's my supplication. Because if it does, and I live up to that, and I embrace that, then I'm emulating God on the totality of the basis of existence. That's why David requested it should pursue me, unceasing. But the only way you can have that supplication or that appreciation, you have to have Ahavas Chesed. Unless you have Ahavas Chesed, you love kindness, it's already too much. Enough is enough. You here yesterday, and you're 2 days ago, and you came 3 days ago. No, enough's enough. Why don't you help yourself? Person says, I'm doing my best. And he's doing his best, but still, I'm not the only guy in the world. Why don't you go to someone else? There are other people who can help you. If you have a good deal coming your way, you send a good deal to a third party, or you take advantage of the good deal. This is a tremendous opportunity. That's the Ahavas Chesed. Giving charity, putting $1 in the box, or getting your letter in the mail before Shoshana. Support the aged home of the sages on the Lower East Side on Willard Street. You get that envelope, you put $5 in the envelope, or maybe $10. You're giving charity, but that's not Ahavas Chesed. There are a lot more important things and ongoing things. People are not well. Visit the sick in the hospital. Providing assistance to certain people who don't have what to eat. Visiting somebody home who's elderly, who's all by himself, and just keeping the person company for half an hour a day to show that person that he has value, that he shouldn't go into a depression. There are many levels of chesed. Chesed doesn't mean it manifests itself in money, in currency. There are all levels of accommodation, all kinds of services, which are chesed. Now, we say in the closing bracha of the Amidah, which is Sim Shalom, where's God to bring peace to the world, and we say, Hi ba'or panecha nosato lanu, with the illumination of your countenance you gave us, Torah's Chaim, the Torah of life, v'Ahavas Chesed. At Sinai, you gave us Torah's Chesed, the Torah which is Chesed, because that's the basis for existence, for the creation of the world. And you gave us Hi ba'or panecha, and you gave us ba'or panecha Torah's Chaim v'Ahavas Chesed, and to be able to love kindness. Let's say a person never went to business school, and he doesn't know a good deal from a bad deal, but he was mentored by the best in the field, and he knows what a good deal is. Now, how do you have such an ability to understand what the good deal is and what the bad deal is? So he said, I was mentored by who knows what, by the expert, and the person who has that evaluation ability. When we stood at Sinai, and God showed us the countenance of his face, we were exposed to his holiness, we received two things: an understanding, Torah's Chesed, the Torah which is kindness. As we said, it begins with kindness, ends with kindness, and also Ahavas Chesed. From that we understood the value of Chesed. It's innate value, therefore we have to love it. It's not enough to do it in a compulsory context. Because we had such an appreciation of what it is, the result of that is Ahavas Chesed. We love kindness. It's one of a deal. There's no deal which is compared to that deal. So if that's the kind of deal, you have Ahavas Chesed, you have love for that kindness. But where did it emanate from? The same source that emanated Torah's Chaim, the Torah, was through the illumination of your countenance. That illumination of his countenance revealed to us, gave us an understanding of the value of doing Chesed. And because we understood its value, therefore it's Ahavas Chesed. The result of that is Ahavas Chesed. Give you an example. Today they have all kinds of chefs. You have a pastry chef. You have some kind of dough chef, pastry dough chef. Every kind of chef. They used to have only Chef Boyardee. Now they have all kinds of chefs. Okay. So the chef, he's from the best in the world, and he's willing to mentor you how to be that pastry chef. And he's going to say, I'm going to teach you how to make a cake, that there's no cake that tastes as rich and as satisfying and as nourishing as this cake I'm going to teach you. And he teaches you how to make the cake. And when you taste it, you've never tasted anything like it in your life. And you have pretty healthy taste buds, and you're a connoisseur on what good taste is. So what did that chef teach you? Through its skills of being top of the line as a chef, and you were exposed to his mentoring, now you can produce that, and you have an appreciation for what the quality of that cake is. It's not buying a cake in a commissioned bakery, off the shelf. It's not one of those cakes. This cake is one of a kind. You have to order it 6 months in advance to be able to get this very type of pastry. When you allowed us to be exposed to the illumination of your countenance, what did you give us? Torah's Chaim. You gave us an understanding that Torah is the source of our life. Ahavas Chesed, and to have a love for kindness, to understand kindness not a perfunctory act, but rather something so infinitely valuable in it. If it has that value, I love it. I want it. I want it not to be detached from it. That's the Ahavas Chesed. And that's what we say in the closing bracha, blessing of the Amidah of the Sib Shalom. It was known, Rav Chaim Brisker, Rav Chaim Soloveitchik, he was, as a young man, he was a yeshiva in Volozhin, which was the Lithuanian yeshiva, which was founded by the primary student of the Vilna Gaon, Rav Chaim Volozhin. Rav Chaim Brisker was married to the granddaughter of Rav Chaim Volozhin. And he was one of a kind of genius, not to be fathomed what kind of genius he was. And he, till today, the analytical approach of studying the Talmud is based on his approach. Throughout the world, at the most advanced level, his method of analysis is used. And even though he was this person of one of a kind of dimension in Torah, in our era, but his level of kindness was not to be believed. Saying he would give the shirt off his back to help anybody who was in need, that's an understatement. Give you an example. And he saw immediately. He saw and understood things immediately. And after a while, his wife, he had a family, and his wife says to him, something, people don't even ask you when you're ready giving. They ask is one thing, but they don't even ask you when they're giving. He says, give me an example. He says, before Pesach, a person comes to you and asks you a halachic question. Could you fulfill the obligation of drinking the 4 cups at the Seder with milk? That's the question the person asked him. The great Torah sage. So what do you think he answered him? He took out a wad of bills out of his pocket, and he gave him enough money to cover the whole Pesach. His wife says, what's going on? Your aunt comes to ask you a halachic question. Could you use milk for the 4 cups at the Seder? And you give a wad of bills that he could literally celebrate Pesach in the most elaborate way. He didn't even ask for money. So he says to his wife, you don't understand. If the man is asking me, could you use milk for the 4 cups? That means he can't afford money. He has no money to buy wine. And he doesn't have money to buy wine. He has no money to buy meat or matzah or anything. So basically, from the question, it's clear to me, the man has nothing. That's why I gave him the wad of bills. You understand? A little bit of analysis. You got to read between the lines. You got to be able to decipher it. But a person who's not looking to help people, You start and stop right there. You could or you cannot be fulfill the mitzvah of 4 cups with milk. You have to have wine. You have to have grape juice, or whatever else you have to have. But again, if you have Ahavas Chesed, and it was known, Reb Chaim Brisker, Reb Chaim Soloveitchik, his level of Chesed, as great as he was in Torah, which everybody paled him in his greatness and his clarity and his analytical approach. When it came to Chesed, it surpassed even his Torah. That was the level of his. There's a story. He was chief rabbi of Brisk, known as Brisk-Litovsk. A rabbi has a library. Every day, a person would come and borrow a sefer, which is a Torah book from his library. And he'd say, "Could I borrow it?" He says, "No problem." Every day he'd come, he'd borrow another book. This has been going on for 6 months. 6 months passed, there's hardly a book left on the shelf. Yeah, this. You want? You're welcome to take. What happens? There's maybe one book left. He says, "Could I borrow that book?" He says, you might as well take the bookcase. I'm not sure where you put the books. Take the bookcase and put all the books in the bookcase. It wasn't upset. What do you mean? What kind of behavior is this? He was willing to look away. Look away. Nothing perturbed him. His son, the Brisker Rov, his name was Reb Zev Soloveitchik, who was his successor, became the chief rabbi of Brisk. Somebody had come to speak to him about a certain issue, and he's in the rabbi's library. He brought one of his young sons, and he hears, and the child was a little rambunctious. He hears the child taking glasses and smashing them, and he understands it must be his kid is breaking the glasses. So he's really getting embarrassed. He brings the child to the chief rabbi's house, and his son's in the other room smashing glasses. He goes out, he's livid, he's upset, grabs his kid by his neck. He says, "What are you doing?" So the Brisker Rav comes out. He says, "Look, leave him alone. He's a child. He's a child. The glass is a glass. They break, so we'll buy other glasses. Don't get upset. It's not the end of the world. A child has to have a release. It's okay. He's breaking the glasses. What is that? The father was upset. He wanted to diffuse it. Wanted to diffuse his father's anger. To see the child as it's something the child needs. And therefore, it's not the end of the world. And because the rabbi is not standing on ceremony there, it's okay. So there's no reason to be embarrassed. That's the way children are. And he was the same. The Brisker writes that when he was a young boy, he never slept in his bed. There was always some guest at the house sleeping in his bed. He always slept on a blanket on the floor. He and his siblings, that's where they slept. Why? Because there was always somebody to host. There was always somebody there. That's the way it was. But you can't do that. You can't turn your house into what's a Grand Central Station when you have a family. But as long as it doesn't infringe and hurt my family, let it be Grand Central Station. Not Penn, Grand Central. Because even have locals there, not even, interstate travel. It's all local. But that's Ahavas Chesed. The Talmud tells us, and this is the litmus test. How do you identify a person? In 3 areas. You look at 3 areas, you have that person pegged exactly what he is. Bekiso means in your pocketbook, your pocket. Bekoso, in your cup of wine. Ubekaso, in your anger. What does that mean? Bekiso. How charitable are you? You got a pocketbook. What do you spend on? What don't you spend on? What do you give for? What don't you give for? If you look at that area, for himself, always liquid. For himself, He announces to the world who he is. For the next person, he doesn't give away ice in the winter. He's always withholding. He'll interrogate the person. What do you need it for? Why do you need it? Okay. So that's one area. Now, kosa, wine. So the Talmud tells us when you drink wine, if you drink wine daintily, like sip it slightly, that's the behavior of an arrogant, pompous person. You know, these wine connoisseurs, they first stick their nose in the glass to smell it, and then they sip it, and then they swoosh it, and they close their eyes, and they have a certain posture on that chair, and then they drink more of it. That's the indication of an arrogant person. If he gulps it, he's a glutton. That's gluttonous behavior. If he drinks it normally, he's a normal person. What about he gets angry? Now, a person gets angry. It tells you a lot about the person. Someone tells you you don't want to have much to do with this person. He's a tinderbox. And even if he doesn't get angry that often, why does he get angry? What upsets him? What ruffles his feathers? So if you look at a person, his pocketbook, the way he drinks, on what and for what he gets angry, you have the person pretty much profiled. You have him pegged. But one is kiso, your wallet, your pocketbook. How do you give charity? What do you do for others? Do you give generously? Are you a miser? Are you considerate? It tells a lot. What kind of Baal Chesed are you? I used the term before, but you don't hear that term any longer. He gives away ice in the winter, and even that he doesn't. He wouldn't give you the time of day. Remember that? One time people had watches. He didn't give you time of day. That means he wasn't willing to look at his watch and give you the time of day. Today, a person says, I'm sorry, I don't carry a cell phone. Can't give you the time. You know, that's the way it works today. But again, a person's Ahavas Chesed. You see a person, an older person needs assistance, step up on the curb of the sidewalk. You go immediately, put your hand under his arm and help him up. Another person says, just keep going. It's not my issue. Let somebody else help him. That's the way people are. Another person says, no. If I could help, why not? I'm not going out of my way. It's not an infringement on my time. In a moment, what means to that person means a tremendous amount. It's a tremendous favor. And to me, it's nothing. But it depends what kind of lens you look through. If it's you and you and you, then you don't see him. But if it's the other person, and then you do see the other person. And that's the way it is. That's the way life works. See, the codifier of his era, he was a doctor, medical doctor. He was the leading medical doctor. He's world renowned. Not only was he a doctor, he was also a psychologist and a psychiatrist, Rambam. And he speaks about changing one's behavior. And he speaks about predilections people have. They're born with them. And how do you change it if you have something negative? And he says it's called conditioning. You have to recondition yourself. And sometimes you have to put yourself to force yourself to do something. And over time, if you force yourself long enough, it becomes second nature. Those are the words of Rambam. Let's say a person knows I don't use the word modestly, he's cheap. He's even cheap on himself. You know, if he could wear that same shirt for 3 days without washing it, he wears it 3 days. Unless somebody tells him, you know, and that's why people wear colored shirts. The white shirt, you can tell right away it's more than a day. Shmuel, you hear that one? So if a person goes and forces himself to act in a more generous way, over time he will become a generous person. He will become generous. Because conditioning, it's repatterning the brain on one's behavior, you change. So let's say a person knows he should be more charitable. You force yourself to do charity. And over time, the more you do it, the easier it becomes. and you begin appreciating the value of what you did. The reason why a person doesn't give, even causes he should support, because he doesn't appreciate the value of his giving, that the success is attributed to his giving. But if you see the value, then you give. Because you made a difference. And if you make a difference in a positive way and you're able to internalize that, you want to do more of it. But that comes through positive conditioning. To undo the negative conditioning, which you have this withholding nature. That's the way it works. Mr. Glick, he should live and be well. He's turning 100 soon. He was a tremendous philanthropist. I'm using the term Balstoker. And whatever he did was on the QT. You will not find the Glick name on any building anywhere. But the amounts of money they gave to build institutions, to support yeshivas and other Jewish institutions is mega, and really mega. So when we moved into the Yad Avram on 63rd Street and we renovated a brownstone, which was given to us on loan by Edmund Safra, he says, I will cover, together with another person, I'll cover all the renovations. I will cover all expenses, furniture, whatever is needed in there. But after that, I want you young guys to share in the budget. You give, I'll give. If there's a shortfall, I'll give a little more. But I want you people to assume responsibility. Why? Because to be able to give large amounts of money, even if you have it, unless you're conditioned to give, you don't give. And you people aren't trained to give large amounts of money or something which is more than something which you consider significant. But as you give and you assume responsibilities and you see the value of what you're doing, it'll make it easier to even give more. And not only give here, give elsewhere. That's what he said to the young people of the group. And he was very correct and accurate that when the people started less, they gave more and more. And some of them are serious balitstoka, serious philanthropists. When they started in their 30s and today they're in the 60s, over the years, assuming financial responsibility for things, and it only happened because they were involved, they taste the value on the return of that support. Shmuel, you hear? That's the way it works.
Yeah, that's very beautiful. I agree 100% what you just said. Yeah, it's all about conditioning. You just have to work on it, and eventually
I'll give you an example. A person doesn't learn 5 minutes a day, and he gets onto a class a half an hour a day, and he enjoys it. Person says, I think I could afford another 15 minutes. And the more he's involved, he really sees it's something that has special value. And that person, before he turns around 2-3 years later, he could be studying 3 hours a day. But initially, he couldn't even open a book. He had no interest. There's a certain inertia to get involved in something you're not accustomed to. You don't go there. So you have to somehow overcome certain things. Once you overcome the hump, so to say, then you're able to start and sensing whatever that is. Sometimes you want more of it. And you add on gradually. Before you turn around, it's something significant. And that's all based on human behavior. Take care.